Looks like I'ma do everything myself. Maybe I should get some help. But hell, if you want something done right, you better do it yourself. Got it? My life's been fucked for now. Got it? Alright, been fucked for now. Got it? And then crawled up your butt for now. Got it? And that's when things got turned around. Got it? Hello everyone, this is CM Kozaman. And today I'm back with a talk that I've been preparing for a long time on one of the strangest but also the most familiar weird religious stories to come out of ancient Rome. Let's take a time machine trip to Rome in the year of 150 AD. As you can see, it's the kind of map that many people these days like to look at, and they almost have an erection. They idealize this. Ancient Rome was so civilized. If it hadn't been for the Dark Ages, everybody would be squirring so hard and we would be civilized, and heck, we could even be living in the Empire of Man in Warhammer 40k. Well, that's what they think, but of course, ancient Rome is a complicated, still extremely admirable civilization, but also they had a lot of strange and uncivilized manners that led to their downfall. Remember, the majority of the population was enslaved in one way or the other, and it looks like the empire fell through barbarian invasions, but also a lot of people just wanted to be rid of it. And heck, in this part of the world, the nice part of the world, Rome persisted for centuries and centuries onwards as Byzantium, and as one might argue as the Ottoman Empire, and later on Turkey. Anyways, what interests me about ancient Rome is the daily life of the people and the extreme similarity between today's daily life in these parts of the world and also the Roman past. In a way, there is a lot of direct, unbroken historic continuity between the Roman days and today's Near East, let us say. And people had a nice time, and this is one of the best inventions to come out of ancient Rome: public toilets. Who can deny that having a nice big fat one is one of the biggest pleasures of the world? And right now, it's been cloistered up away from public spaces in our homes. How uncivilized. And of course, there is also a lot of this going on, but I think it's been discussed so much that it's kind of like irrelevant to talk about ancient Roman sexuality now. Aside from sexuality, human life is swayed by two great tyrants, hope and fear, and that a man who could use both of these to his advantage would speedily become rich, said Lucian of Samosata. Today we're gonna be discussing this ancient snake god of the Roman days called Glycon, and most of our information comes from Lucian of Samosata's critical book about this snake cult, and it's just such an amazing story that I just really enjoyed reading and researching about this, and I hope you enjoy listening to it as well. Speaking of enrichment, we're all going through tough times today. I know a lot of people are leaving me on Patreon, and on exit polls, I'm always reading the cause as like they're running out of money, and I fully understand that. But if you can find it in yourself to support me on Patreon, the link is in the video description. Even $1 a day makes a great difference. Anyways, so our story begins here, in the better part of the Roman Empire, in the Near East, near the Anatolian provinces and the Thracian and what later became the Greek provinces. Things are going well. People are having a nice sunny day. taking a shit, buying and selling fruits, buying and selling slaves. What's there not to like? Anyways, here in the city of Abonoteikos, which I will later reveal in a strange plot twist, a strange thing happens. A man named Alexander of Abonoteikos is born. And he is like a very charismatic leader, a very popular guy. But he's also a little tricky, you know. He's a like natural born swindler. Charisma is a very strange thing in social life. I mean, if you have it, you can literally get people to do everything. And people have this reality banding effect. And to this day, we can see it in people like Steve Jobs, or the guy who launched WeWork, and other figures, you know, especially political figures have a lot of that. So this guy, Alexander of Abonoteikos, born in the city of Abonoteikos in the Black Sea coast of Bithynia in Roman days, he was a shifty customer. According to Lucian's description, mentally configure a highly diversified soul blend made out of lying, trickery, perjury, and malice. Facile, audacious, venturesome, diligent in the execution of his schemes, plausible, convincing, masking as good, and wearing an appearance absolutely opposite to his purpose. So this guy was a high-functioning sociopath. Not only was he charismatic, but he was also like cunning, calculating, and he was not merely greedy, but he knew how to use his power to better himself. So what did this guy do? Okay, so this guy grew up as an apprentice to a quack doctor, the kind of which was common in Roman days. So, speaking of doctors, I need one. I'm suffering from a flu. Oh. So in Roman days there were doctors and there were quack doctors, and of course the line between the two was not very clear. So quack doctors would go to sick people and conduct these weird remedies, weird therapies. Here this doctor is trying to treat this boy by using a cup sucking treatment. So what happens is, underneath these cups he would place a burning piece of cotton. So as it burned, it would suck in the dirty blood from these little incisions here. And to this day, this treatment is conducted in Turkey and in a lot of Islamic countries. Somewhere along the way, it became co-opted as a Islamic cure, but I don't know. So anyways, Alexander of Abonoteikos, cunning, charismatic, and smart, was let's say, an apprentice, something like this guy, near one of these quack doctors. Actually, this picture represents a good doctor, but this guy was a quack doctor. He wasn't above, swindling his customers. And, in this day and age, all of these schemes blended with sort of like weird sexual schemes as well. So, he was also very charismatic. And according to Lucian, who is our chief source about this guy, Alexander of Abonoteikos was also quite handsome. So, he was also not about, let's say, peddling his pussy to rich clients and making a dishonest buck along the side. So quack doctors, quack treatments, male prostitution, they all kind of intermeshed and were indistinguishable from each other in this kind of hustling lifestyle. One day you're helping with the cup sucking treatment, the next day you're doing another kind of sucking treatment. Anyway, this guy, like many social climbers and hustlers and hawks, made his way to one of the big cities of the region, which was Chalcedon, right next to Byzantium. But of course, this is the age before Byzantium became Constantinople and Istanbul. So actually, Chalcedon was the big city in this region at that time. So like every hustler and hawk, even to this day actually, he went to Chalcedon, which today we know as Kadıköy. This is the kind of nice Brooklyn. If you're in the States, you could compare it to a hipster version of Brooklyn. So it's a kind of like lively part of Istanbul today. But recently it's become gentrified, and all those, weird hipsters, hawks, those yoga people, those vegan people, and all those like social climbers have also begun to flock here. So it's a case of history repeating itself, I guess. Anyways, so this guy swindling his pussy and bussy and his doctoral tricks, his tricky, anyways, he made his way to Chalcedon, which is Kadıköy, and there he formed a partnership with a Byzantine writer of choral songs, far more abominable than himself by nature. Kokonas was his nickname, and they went about the country practicing quackery and sorcery and trimming the fatheads, stealing money from the rich, basically, for these quack treatments and those feel-good tricks, which came in more than one form. And, so they were like hustlers, basically, and they were, apparently in Roman days, there were a lot of people like this. I mean, what separates Roman times from medieval times is the absolute profusion of urban masses, in a way comparable to today. So there were a lot of people who lived in urban cities. They were like urban poor. These were the people for which the proverbial breads and circuses were devised. So among this kind of pullulating masses, this one swindler, Kokonas, and here's a representation of Kokonas of Byzantium. I know, it's just a random picture of a con man. So there, he formed a partnership with our man Alexander of Abonoticus, and today they were like ding in ding ding ding ding ding ding ding ding ding ding ding ding ding. They were practicing all sorts of weird magic, cures, strange curse tablets, like I don't know, genie tricks and sex tricks and other sex tricks. They were basically getting some free money, and I cannot tell you how common this is in the present day, especially in still this part of the world. We're about to see more of that later, but like, especially those rich people, they kind of deserve to be swindled. All those yoga people, like, they go there literally, like, give them an enema and call it like some sort of gut rejuvenation. And I don't know. So this medication, spiritual stuff, all of these kind of blends into each other in a kind of messy, hopeful, and hustling way of life. So these guys were like really engaging it, but our guy, Alexander of Abonoticus, had bigger dreams. Then one day they wanted to like enlarge their business, So Alexander and Kokonas met this Macedonian woman who was very rich, but also like sometimes these rich people are not as naive as some of the others. So she was kind of like, hey boys, I like the tricks you're pulling, so come over with me to my homeland. Let's go to Pella, which was a kind of popular town at the time of Alexander the Great. Here it is. By the way, all these maps come from the digital atlas of the Roman Empire, and please visit this website if you want to know more about the ancient world. It's like a amazing resource. Basically, it's a map of all the place names known from the antiquity, that is to say ancient Greece, Rome, and beyond, and it's a really nice resource. So this lady says, let's go to Pella. Once upon a time, this was a flourishing town under the kings of Macedon, but now it's 150 AD. A lot of time has passed, so it's like kind of a run-down town that was once great. But what made it interesting was around this city, or around this region, there was a snake cult. These Macedonians practiced this weird kind of snake magic. They being Kokonas and Alexander, they saw great serpents, quite tame and gentle, so that they were kept by women, slept with children, let themselves be stepped upon, were not angry when they were stroked, and took milk from the breast, just like babies, just like kids. And at this junction, I gave a lot of thought about what these snakes could be, because like in ancient Rome and ancient Greece, there were a lot of snake cults. Today we're going to be discussing a snake god named Glycon, but let there be no mistake, not every snake cult is based on Glycon, and Glycon itself is not directly related to these snake cults. Basically, snakes are amazing animals, and it's actually very difficult not to form a snake cult if you see one. So look upon these mosaics of snakes while I blow my nose. God. Oh shit. Oh, it's Okay, feel better now. So I thought a lot about putting my herpetology enthusiast hat on. I thought a lot about what these snakes could be, because in this region there are a lot of big snakes, there are a lot of tame snakes, but we just don't know what great snakes Lucian is talking about. There is the famous Asclepian snake, Zamenis longissimus, which is like a kind of a big and somewhat tame snake. They're really charismatic animals. Of course, these snakes' common name, Asclepian snake, it's related to Asclepius, the god of medicine, whom we will see more of later. Or it could be one of the only boa species to live in continental Europe, Eryx jaculus. Basically, this is a burrowing boa snake that lives in Europe. A fascinating animal. So it looks like a big and dangerous snake, but if you know these animals, they're very tame, harmless, they're just easy to hold. So maybe these great serpents were Eryx, these kind of snakes. Or they could also have been some of the many vipers that live in this area. There's the famous Macrovipera schweizeri, which is this like fat and dangerous snake. But surprisingly, these snakes are reluctant to bite when handled. So if someone knows how to handle them properly, like, I don't know. In ancient days, people were not really big on herpetology, so they could have just fondled these snakes as well. Or it could be a lizard. So in the same region, there's actually one of the biggest species of lizards to live in continental Eurasia, Pseudopus apodus. Until recently, this was known as Ophisaurus apodus. But then, herpetology classification is weird, I guess. Just a second. So over this sip of herbal tea. So this is actually a lizard related to slow worms. It's a snail-crunching, enormous lizard with an armored body. And I have kept these animals as temporary pets. And they're just really tame, really docile, easy to touch. They're really they've got very strong jaws, and if they wanted, they could really bite you, but for some reason, they're really tame. So maybe these could be the snakes, or ancient Romans, especially in those, swindling, hustling masses, they did not really know or care much about serpents or what kinds there were, So maybe they had all of these snakes one way or the other, and they were just handling them and playing with them and forming a cult around them. These snake cults persisted for a long, long time, by the way, and until recent times in Turkey, which is kind of the inheritor of folk magic in this part of the world. Remember the cup-sucking treatment I showed you earlier? Well, it's still being practiced in Turkey. And until recently, they had surprise snake healers and snake worshippers too. This is a article from the 1950s, I believe. It says, "The art of snake handling has gone far. Here, let me give you a snake and you could put it in your chest. It will get you cold like ice. Ismail Effendi, the snake master, wants to teach ladies how to dance with the snakes." And this is like a solid gold version of Turkish press huckstery, let us say, because this phrase, "Yılan vereyim de göğsünüze sokun," every Turkish person who can read will realize the joke here. It's very similar to "Yılan vereyim de götünüze sokun," which is to say, let me give you a snake for you to show up your ass, literally. And so this guy has a snake called Çakır Kız, and Çakır Kız is drinking from a cup here. It's funny because this looks like an Asclepian snake, this guy here, whereas the creature in this photograph with the rigid body and these ridges, it looks like a Pseudopus lizard. So once again, these snake people, they don't know what they're dealing with, to be honest. They have a lived experience with these snakes, so they probably know when a snake will bite and when it will not. But scientifically speaking, they could not tell one species of snake from the other. And then here is Ismail Effendi, the 1950s snake master, with Çakır Kız, the little daughter. But this snake, actually, from the photo, we can't see much. In large, the face looks like a viper. I mean, it could be this other snake known as Coronella austriaca, which looks like a viper but is not. But it could also be a genuine viper, because like these guys, they don't care. Sometimes they also defanged the vipers, so now they were rendered completely harmless. But anyways, this concludes our big tangent into snake worship and its historic continuity in Turkey and surrounding areas. And back in those days, there were also lots of cults with oracles. So these, of course, you probably know the Oracle of Delphi. There are also other oracles in other temples, and in these temples, usually young girls were drugged up with all sorts of psychoactive plants or smoke, or also they had a political angle too. So usually these priests kind of said, hey girl, when we drug you up for the next session, you're gonna kind of give this answer, you know. So these were holy sites, really without parallel in the present day of age, where these ladies would assume the voice of a god, and here are the votive gifts the oracle has received from all the people, and she's giving like predictions of the future. And of course these are very famous. Another oracular scene here by this amazing, I forgot the name of this painter, but it's one of those amazing late 19th century Orientalist and antiquitist painters. Amazing. So this lady is giving an oracle, and all these other ladies are going crazy. And this artist has really captured the continuity between ancient antique culture, Roman culture, and contemporary quote-unquote Middle Eastern culture really well. Remember, the biggest inheritor of ancient Rome and ancient Greece was not these Warhammer SPQR jerk-off guys, but surprisingly, it was the Islamic East. I mean, without the Muslims, Europeans could not have learned the translations of many ancient works. But anyways, that's another tangent we'll get into deeper in the later, let's say. So Alexander and Kokkonas, they were like hustling with this Macedonian lady, sucking, fucking, dealing, curing, scaring, treating, whatever. And they were like conniving, trying to come up with a business plan. They looked at all these snake cults and all these oracles, and they kind of, the gears were turning in their fucked up little heads, and they were like, let's have a big business idea. So as Lucian comments, as you might have expected of two consummate rascals fully prepared for mischiefs, they put their heads together and they saw that human life is swayed by two great tyrants, hope and fear. And this is a great quote. This is a great takeaway, by the way, from Lucian of Samosata's critique of Alexander and his misdeeds. And the link is in the video description. Click here, you can read the whole thing for free. And it's just an amazing story, amazing book. I wish there were more books like that in the present day. So they saw that hope and fear ruled the lives of people, especially those poor, urban, antique Roman masses. And a man who could use these to his advantage would soon become rich. And it's almost like those fucked up, like mid-2010s startup craze. Remember those days? Those years? Everybody had a startup idea. How to start a startup. What a fucker. I mean, this mentality, in my humble opinion, is as evil and is as deserving of violent, unprejudiced destruction as these two, like, scallywags. I mean, at least these people were kind of operating in a, like, they knew they were scheming. These people are so evil, they're not even aware of their evil. They're not even aware of how evil they are. Look at this. Live in the future, ahead of your time. What is missing in the world? Write it down and bounce ideas around. What a this dishonest language. I mean, it should be like the telltale sign of an evil person, an unintentionally evil person. Right ahead. Show the prototype to 100 people, whatever, iterate. Look, so they're like bouncing ideas. Should we make a temple? Should we make a snake cult? We got these big ass snakes from this Macedonian woman. How to use these snakes? They were like brainstorming, these fuckers. Look at them. Look at them go. With a co-founder. So they launch and get 1,000 users, grow 5% a week. Hard, but proven possible. And then they have success. All these people without faces. If I could press one button to destroy all of... Anyways. So they concocted a project of founding a prophetic shrine and an oracle. So they went big, They're launching the startup. They registered their C Corp. They were going to split the equity by launching a prophetic shrine and an oracle. Remember, that was big business on these days. All these donations in these temples, people bought them with their money. And all these priests got filthy rich. So they wanted to get filthy rich. Oh my God. Try to say the word concocted with your nose blocked with... Concoct this. Oh my God, my nose is bleeding now. But I'm dedicated to you, my fans and followers. So they wanted to build a shrine and an oracle. And they had a bright idea. Look at this bright idea. And the bright idea was to have a temple. And they would get rich, hopefully. So they were bouncing ideas around. This guy was from, remember, Byzantium. So they say, hey, let's have the temple in Kadıköy, in Chalcedon. And Alexander was, I'm from the town of Abonotikos on the Black Sea coast. Let's have the temple there. So they arrived at a compromise. They said, first, let's start the cult in Chalcedon, and then we will move it to your hometown, Abonotikos. And it began, at this temple. There was a big temple of Asklepios in Chalcedon, in Kadıköy. Now, if you know Istanbul, this is probably buried under the train station these days. But anyways, Asklepios, of course, was the snake-wielding medicine god of healing. And there was this big temple. And all these temples, this is too austere. It's the best reconstruction I could find, but even that is too austere. Remember, all these temples were brightly painted, and they were covered with these, so there would be 10 beggars on these steps, maybe 5 prostitutes here, 5 bussy prostitutes here, and people without arms or legs, or blind people begging for alms here. And inside there would be healing, and people with money was changing hands. I mean, an ancient temple was a hospital, a brothel, and a bank, and a church, all combined. I mean, these ancient people, they were really versatile. And they knew how to focus all the necessary parts of life in one structure. So they went to this temple of Asklepios in Chalcedon. And under its foundation, secretly, they buried some fake tablets. Of course, this is an image from, Mormon or Latter-day Saints mythology. Of course, if you know the mythology of the LDS movement. By the way, I know I have some LDS friends and fans. So please don't take this as a diss, but the Church of Latter-day Saints, I mean, this apparently happened. Okay, let's not even go there, but it's kind of similar. So they buried these fake plates under this temple, and lo and behold, they pretended to uncover them. Amazing brass plates, and it says, "I'm coming back, bitches. Be there at Abonotikos. Signed, God Asklepios, the god of healing." How bizarre. So it was like a grand reveal. It was their way of going, where was this thing? Registering your C Corp and launching. They let everyone knew that they were about to do something. So they launched on Chalcedon with these fake plates, prophesizing the return of Asklepios to Abonotikos, out of all places. This is such a backwoods place that one wonders, but let's follow the story. But in the meantime, Kokonas, when he was playing with these vipers or big snakes, got bit by a snake and he died. How sad. From now on, the whole story would be carried on forward by our friend Alexander of Abonoteikos. So he came back to his hometown and he had prepared a fake oracle in his name. And the oracle says, "Here in your sight is a scion of Perseus, dear unto Phoebus. This is divine Alexander, who shared the blood of the healer being Asclepius, the healing god, of course." So also he dressed for the occasion too, and this is one thing that has never changed. Personally, I hate clothes. I hate buying clothes and shoes so much. I think it's like the worst expense one could make. So I always walk around with 10-year-old clothes. I like dressing cleanly, so I always wash my t-shirts every day. I always keep them clean, but I don't like buying new clothes. And I like dressing in a way that I would not be noticed in a crowd, But of course, this guy knew how to dress. And of course, in those days, as it is now, if you dressed for the part, people really believed in you. So he now wore his hair long, very charismatic. He was already a handsome guy, remember? He had his like boozy dealing days. He was like quite desirable. So now he's more matured. Now he's ready to do some fucking. So he's rocking the bling. He's got the drip. He wore his hair long. He had falling ringlets, and he was dressed in a party-colored tunic of white and purple, and with a white cloak over it, like quite godlike. Carried a falchion. It's like an ancient sword, like a symbolic sword, like that of Perseus, from he claimed descent on his mother's side. So he looked the part, he spoke the part, and people of Abonoteikos, which is a kind of backwater place with a gillable population, let us say, really like took him in. Oh, it's like, wow, this guy. Oh man, and he started the construction of a new temple there, dedicated to Asclepius. But one night he performed an amazing miracle. So what he did, Alexander, was he took an eggshell and he took a little baby snake. Oh, by the way, he had like apparently baskets of these big snakes from Macedonia brought over, but he had never showed them to anybody in his town. And he was, overseeing the foundation of this temple. So probably he had secured some fund money as well. It's amazing how these ancient con schemes are similar to present day startup schemes, and I guess it tells us a lot, doesn't it? Anyway, so he took a little snake, a baby snake, and he put it in a broken eggshell, and he sealed the eggshell with wax and painted it over with white, So it almost like, and he buried this little egg in the mud beneath the foundations of the temple he was overseeing the construction of in Abonoteikos, near the Black Sea shore. And one day he was like faking a religious madness. Remember, he also looks very charismatic. He looks very like charming, like a con man basically. So, and he's also rich. He's helping build this temple. And suddenly he's like, he starts talking in tongues. And he's like, hepinizin anasını sikiyim, saftirik orospu çocuklar. And then like he's like having a religious mania. And he jumps in the rain, in the mud. He jumps into the foundations of this temple, and he pretends to discover this little egg. And he's like, in this egg, there is the body of the God, the body of the God. The God walks with me. And click, he opened the egg, and out comes this little snake. And everybody like, wow, this guy is just performing miracle after miracle. Like, this whole story, by the way, it should be turned into a movie. I don't know by who, maybe by Ridley Scott, or if you want to get really like kinky and dark about it, maybe one of the European directors like Lars von Trier, with lots of explicit sex scenes, straight and gay, like all these guys swindling, hustling, fucking each other over, sometimes literally. Or maybe it could be this director who directed this amazing recent Netflix series, Midnight Mass. You should go watch it. Like this whole story I'm telling you right in this video, it deserves to be made into a film because it's such a timeless and universal tale. So anyways, this guy fakes this mania and uncovers this little snake, okay? And then also, he, without anybody else realizing, he apparently created a puppet. According to Lucian, they had long ago prepared and fitted up a serpent's head of linen, which had something of a human look, and it was all painted up and appeared very lifelike. It would open and close its mouth by the means of horse hairs, which are very tiny, so they're like invisible string. And the forked tongue, like a snake's, also controlled by horse hairs, would dart out. Lucian also explains that they used a lot of contemporary special effects. Like, remember, ancient people were every bit as inventive as we are now, so they were extremely talented with arts, crafts. They could probably make something like this without the use of plastics. Heck, like, if you're a movie fan, if you know this film, Eraserhead by David Lynch, which in my opinion is the only proper film Lynch directed, then David Lynch discovered it was easier to become a trickster. And so he made a lot of these bullshit and senseless films that everyone thought must be really smart. Kind of like a rhyme in history, don't you think? Anyways, so David Lynch in this film, in his student film Eraserhead, made this like bizarre crying humanoid baby creature, which really looks like this sculpture of this snake human god he's about to reveal. And to this day and age, in the special effects community, nobody knows how exactly he built this. And like, one of the salient theories is that David Lynch used a basically calf's head. He took a newborn dead cow, kind of like kept the head, maybe covered it with silicone or something, and made this amazing baby. Because if you watch this film, it really looks lifelike. You know, you would not expect something like that from a student movie. Anyways, so somehow they made this human-looking snake head with the effects available to people in those days. The writer also tells that they used something like a swan's or a stork's trachea, which is really long, and they used it to pipe voices through this puppet head, because now you're gonna see what happens. Also, in the present day and age, like, such disgusting traditions also exist. So let's take another tangent and go to Indonesia and Malaysia. There, tokai geckos, which are like these big geckos but nowhere this large, they are believed to be sacred, and gigantic tokai geckos, they are thought to be divinely influenced animals. So people buy and sell these giant geckos for enormous sums of money. They're also used for, of course, folk magic and folk trickstery. So there are also movies of them, and they really look lifelike. And what they do is they actually take a monitor lizard, which is like really giant and big looking. They cover the entire lizard with paint. This is really cruel. They cover its head with a fake big gecko head, and they like glue these like fake gecko plastic toe pads onto the monitor lizard's legs, and they produce these low resolution videos, and it really looks like a giant gecko walking about, but actually it's a monitor lizard thrashing about in this like plastic bodysuit, and it's really, really cruel. I mean, and it's also another sign that some things in the world never change, basically. So they built this fake big snake head. So what happens is, now Alexander found this baby snake, faked this religious mania, locked himself up from the world, and then prepared the puppet. How it worked was that he was sitting in a dark room, and the puppet's body was on his lap, and the puppet's body was one of the bodies of these giant snakes. Then somehow, like a ventriloquist's puppet, he held the fake human snake head like a puppet, basically, and some assistant behind the scenes, maybe behind the curtain, was like operating the mouth of this snake with like the body of a genuine snake and the fake puppet human head, whatever, and making it speak. So he revealed in a few days that this baby snake, supposedly, had fully grown and become a god. Remember, Alexander practiced a lot with his former partner Kokonas. And even before him, he practiced a lot with this like swindling doctor he used to work with. So he knows a lot of tricks of the trade. So like a startup, they're bringing in all these like tricks together and revealing a final, amazing, divine product that will launch him on a journey of fame and fortune. Behold Glycon the Serpent. And apparently this snake speaks, this human-headed snake speaks, and the first thing it says was, Glycon am I, the grandson of Zeus, bright beacon to mortals. And the name Glycon means sweet one. Like, here is like, it could have been a more charismatic or scary name. I mean, I don't know why they chose Sweetie as a name for this really scary beast. But anyways, so the god is revealed. And not surprisingly, Alexander is his prophet. Just a second. Enjoy looking at Glycon while I take another sip of herbal tea. Oh, my throat is gonna be sore when this talk is done. Anyways, so Alexander revealed his cult, and it was like a very smoothly running business. What happens is that he works in two ways. There are these sessions, maybe for the very rich or perhaps for like crowds of people, where he reveals Glycon the god and he makes it speak somehow. He delivers direct oracles. So that's one part of the show. The bigger part, the money-making part, is actually he takes written parchments for oracles. So people basically prepare these like scrolls and seal them with wax. And here they write the name of whoever who is like writing it. I say, maybe I'm curious about something. I'll say, will I have more Patreon donators this month? And it's written inside. And on the outside, it's my name, CM Kozaman. And it's sealed with a wax seal. And then what happens is, Alexander and his team of scribes, and it's not mentioned directly, but it's obvious that he had a great team, a great inner circle who was in on this scam, because they were probably operating the puppet. They were collecting all these scroll oracle parchments, and they were basically dealing with the day-to-day goings of the temple. So what happens is, Alexander takes these scrolls into his like inner sanctum, and then with some like trick method, maybe he kind of melts the wax or like cuts through the paper somehow, and he opens them basically, but he camouflages traces of his opening. So he reads them and gives out answers. And if he cannot find the answers, he gives out vague answers. And this was a big business. With like he was like reading them without reading them and answering these oracles, returning them to their owners with the answers. And Lucian says the price was very cheap, but he was apparently turning a profit on volume, because he earned as much as 70 or 80,000 drachmas a year. People were sending him lots of questions. He was really becoming popular. And like a good startup investor, he was investing this money. He wasn't keeping it for himself. Now, this is where Alexander was really smart, because somebody else, like a mere charlatan, would have just, used that money for amazing bussy parties or amazing pussy parties or, I don't know, shulibili bing bong parties or just lots of money, whatever. But he was actually using his money on the business. He was employing spies to spy on people who were, especially those famous people who were about to give him oracles. He was sending men abroad. He was basically doing PR and advertising. Like, he's like a really evil sociopath, but you cannot admire how resourceful and smart he was. Kind of like many contemporary political figures, don't you think? He was using the money to send people abroad to like spread his fame, advertising. So he was like doing the whole bits, SOE, whatever. he was spreading rumors that Glycon was able to raise the dead. What a motherfucker. And he was also selling, like apparently, I read this straight from Lucian, he was also selling like ointments and medicine from the temple, kind of like these Alex Jones medicine, don't you think? Ultimate bone broth, oxy powder, brain powder. He was selling a lot of these like fake treatments, and it was just like it was brisk business, let me just say. He was turning an enormous profit. And of course, a lot of people started coming to Glycon with these like fake oracles. And sometimes people would be so rich and so stupid, they would deliver him like something like, oh, when will my wife die? I hate her. Or like, oh, when will my secret lover come out to join me or something. So what happened is, Alexander, being very wily, he used these for blackmail. Basically, he used extortion to get loads of more money, and like it became like a snowball of fame, money, and mythical mania, and his power just grew and grew. In the words of the preeminent Canadian-American philosopher Jim Carrey in his immortal work Batman Forever, if knowledge is power, then a god am I. Did you watch that film? Batman Forever. Not only is Batman Forever the best Batman film, it's also the best film with Jim Carrey in it, and Jim Carrey's performance in this film is just amazing. Like all the other like serious Batmans, even like those like anal retentive Christopher Nolan Batmans, the only thing that made those movies good was that one film in which Heath Ledger basically rescued the show. And then it was just like a heartless couple of films, in my opinion. But Batman Forever, that's where the fun is. It's like grimy, dystopian with a good message. Anyways, one day I'll talk to you for 3 hours non-stop about Batman Forever. Was that over the top? I could never tell. I can still remember every line Jim Carrey spoke in this film from 1993. That's what a weird boomer I am. Anyway, so like he was like literally assuming the powers of a god, and like dingin diggy diggy dingin dingin dingy dingin dingy dingy diggy dingy. So Glycon was on a roll. Alexander of Abonoticus was on a roll, and he was like using this fame and fortune and power to his advantage, according to Lucian. But some like weird fuck ups also happened, some embarrassing errors, let us just say. The Roman Empire in these years went into war with the Parthian Empire under Vologash IV, the righteous Persian ruler. So these uncivilized westward invaders tried to contest Vologash IV for the border province of Armenia. There was a lot of back and forth action going in these parts. And then the Roman-Parthian War of 1961 to 6 began. And these are the noble armies of Persia advancing under the fallen bodies of their pesky Roman invaders. Anyways, of course, as he acquired power, Alexander with Glycon also started getting political, like many of those political YouTubers you have. Do you notice how these like crap YouTubers, left and right, but mostly right, they like when there's a war in Ukraine or whatever, they just have to comment on the Ukrainian war. People are dying. Never occurs to them. They could just shut the fuck up, just respect the tragedy. No, they have to have an opinion. They have to have a projection. Anyways, so Alexander of Abonoticus with Glycon also made such a prophecy about this war. He basically, let's say, he got a local governor and a local like influential political military leader. He got him to believe in him, and for him he delivered this oracle. Under your charging spear shall fall Armenians and Parthai. Then you shall fare to Rome and the glorious waters of Tiber, wearing upon your brow the chaplet studded with sunbeams. Basically, he promised this guy a total victory over the Persians and their Armenian allies, but of course it was a total rout. Marcus Sedatus Severianus was convinced to invade, and he committed suicide while under siege in the Armenian city of Elegia on the upper Euphrates. Served him right, and his legion got fucking wiped out after. What an L. Oh my god. I really love and respect Roman civilization, but I really savor these confident, arrogant defeats. For me, they're like chamomile tea. Oh my god. So he trusted this Armenian oracle about from Glycon, and then of course it was really embarrassing. So in the temple records, what Alexander did was quietly, they took this like oracle, this prophecy promising victory, with a chaplet studded with sunbeams. It's like an OnlyFans getup. I'm wearing a chaplet studded with sunbeams. Follow me on OnlyFans to see what I do in it. Anyways, they change this oracle, and they say, better for you that your forces against Armenia march not. Let some man, like a woman bed-tied, dispatch from his bowstring grim death, cutting you off from life and enjoyment of sunlight. Now, of course, these are all English translations, but I cannot help but notice that these oracles of Alexander of Abanoticus in the guise of Glycon, they were also craply written. I mean, lots of adjectives, lots of silly adjectives that don't need to be there. They're not concise, they're verbose, even though these are English translations and I cannot read the Greek or Roman Latin originals. But still, I mean, look at this. So it's like basically this is them belittling their enemies. Like a girly Persian is gonna shoot you with an arrow and cut you off from life. Basically, but this guy was a gullible loser, and he was also like the writer of this critique, Lucian, mentions Marcus Sedatus Severianus as a gullible Celt. So he was from the western end of the empire who somehow like became a military province governor in this part of the world, and like he was convinced by an oracle for an easy victory, and at least he had the guts to kill himself. Anyways, and this is how the oracle was changed basically. So these guys were like really slimy customers, and once again I think this would really make a great film about the immorality of people like this, especially the careless way, like how many people died in that war, Roman soldiers and Persians alike. And also something else happened. So there was another like really powerful and influential Roman who believed in the Glycon myth. He swallowed it hook, line and sinker, okay? And this guy was Rutilianus, and Rutilianus had a son, and he's like, dear god Glycon, who should be my son's tutor? Because like rich and influential Romans had to like bring their children to a tutor in those days. And then Glycon said, be it Pythagoras, I, and the good bard Homer, master of warfare. Of course, in this day and age, Pythagoras and Homer are long dead. Like they lived centuries before this story happened. But suddenly, Rutilianus' son died. Poor kid. And then like this should have been like the moment when Alexander should have been like carried off to the arena and executed in the grimmest and most bloody way imaginable. And according to Lucian, Alexander was going crazy. Oh shit, man, we fucked up real bad this time. What are we gonna do? He had nothing to say to his critics. And the oracle was false, like, your son is gonna study with the best tutors, but then the kid dies. How could you not see this coming? You fucking snake god. You fucking snake. Anyways, but then Rutilianus was such a believer that says, oh no, it was true. It was true because Pythagoras and Homer are both dead, and it was a sign that my son was about to die. And now he's studying in Hades together with Homer and Pythagoras. So this guy was so gullible that he basically took one for the team. And also, but one also wonders, maybe he knew this was a ruse, but in order to use this cult's power, remember, this cult had hundreds and maybe thousands of people believing in it. It was a like big source of revenue. So maybe he was in on this money game. So maybe he took one for the team. Who knows? But either way, like maybe he was really guilty or maybe he was really gullible. But he said, oh, no, he knew. My son was about to die. The oracle saw this coming. Now they're studying together in Hades, which is really interesting because apparently Hades is not hell as we know it today. It is more similar to the Judaic conception of Sheol, which is like this shady place where everybody goes after death, good or bad. They just go there and hang out, which is, I think, a better view of the afterlife. And then the Antonine Plague hit. This was the strongest time of, like, one of the best times of the Roman Empire, but it was also like full of wars and disease and death all over. Many people died, especially in Italy. This was an awful plague. And then maybe this helped the Glycon cult gain some more traction because Alexander composed this rhyme, Phoebus, the god unshorn, kept off the plague's nebulous onset. So basically he said, if you take this phrase and write it on your doorstep or above your door entrance, the god will protect you from the plague. Remember that this whole thing was a spin-off from the cult of Asclepius, who was the healer god. So now everybody in this plague days, they were like hastily like writing these Glycon prophecies on their doorsteps, desperately hoping to avoid death. And then also Glycon had two schools of enemies. Like Christians really kind of hated him, and also Epicurean philosophers too. Epicureans were basically like skeptics today, you know. They came from the more educated and, let's say, more honest people among the Roman populace, but they also had some neckbeard like qualities about themselves, but who am I to judge? And Christians were like, heck, even Christians, and they saw like any competing cult as a threat to themselves. I mean, say what you will about Christians in the Roman era, but it's like the more I read about the spread of monotheism in the Roman Empire, it's a like fascinating and complex series of events. And like when you read how the Christians spread, basically in their first days they were like no different from ISIS today actually, or Daesh. They were like untrustworthy, scary people, you know, like you wouldn't want to be around them. But as they grew stronger, of course, they like destroyed all the sculptures, destroyed all Roman popular culture. They really hated a lot of the institutions of Roman civilization. But perhaps rightly, they hated the theaters, they hated the Colosseum, they hated the notions of slavery. Like for that, you kind of hate them, but also like you see how selflessly they acted and how brave some of these people must have been. I'm not talking just in terms of like becoming a martyr or like getting fed to the lions, but like some people really like gave up everything they had for this belief, which leads me wonder like there must have been something in Roman civilization in those days that is as disgusting, dishonest, and as despicable as today's modern civilization. I'll leave it at that, and maybe we can talk about that later. But remember, Rome fell not only because of the barbarian invasions, but also because many people living in that civilization were sick of that shit. So never forget that. So anyways, these two groups were big enemies of the Glycon cult, and because of that, what happens was Alexander then took the game one level upwards. So remember, he started out by delivering oracles, showing his snake puppet and impressing people. Then after the plague years, he established a celebration of mysteries. Now in Roman days, there were lots of mysteries. Like in present day, you can maybe somehow compare Freemasonry to them. They were like these secret societies, usually also associated with some sort of class upwards mobility. But there were also some secret societies or secret mysteries only for women, for example, or like other groups or whatever. So what happened that Alexander wanted a mystery of his own. He wanted like a special series of rites for his followers only, kind of like Scientology actually. So people joined for like special week or day of celebrations, and on the first day Alexander like went up on his temple and said, if any atheist or Christian or Epicurean has come to spy upon the rites, let him be off. And basically he was scared of these people apparently. So it's a win for the Christians and a win for their Epicurean opponents alike. And then there was like, even like they hated them so much that in the opening there was this kind of ritual wordplay in which they says, out, Alexander was on the rooftop, I guess, screaming, out with the Christians! And then the crowd was like, out with the Epicureans! And of course it was like a big weird shit show. This thing happened in moonlit lights apparently, and according to Lucian, who is Alexander's biggest critique, Alexander like covered his legs with gold gilded leather. Sounds like a fetish accessory, but he basically like let his toga like flash every now and then in the moonlight, and people saw his golden ties, and apparently this made him look more like a god or more like a semi-divine figure. And remember, Alexander was already like very charismatic, very handsome, so like this kind of added to his cult of personality. Well, also Alexander was not above enriching himself with pussy or bussy. According to Lucian, he was a serious serial pederast, but he never did this openly. Alexander continued to abstain from intercourse with boys on the ground that it was impious. For his own part, this pattern of propriety he made a clever arrangement. He sent out to the entire region, cities in the Pontus, that is to say the Black Sea and the Paphlagonia regions, send me your choir boys for 3 years of service. And everybody was like, oh, our son is going to the temple. Okay, so all these poor choir boys came to sing hymns to the god snake. And of course Alexander only wanted the youngest and most handsome boys, and I mean, let's not imagine how he abused them. And he also was like a serial womanizer as well. But before the women, he kept the boys under like lock and key. He treated them like slaves, sleeping them and affronting them in every way. He also like made a rule. He only kissed with young people, basically. So in our present day standards, he was like a serial pederastic rapist, and he only slept with those within the kiss. That is to say, those younger than 18 years old. What a disgusting person. And of course, for women, he was also hungry too. So this was like a omnivorous, total sociopath. That's why I think like if a film of this guy ever gets made, some like pervy European director like Lars von Trier should do it with a lot of these like disgusting, smutty sex scenes, just to show how evil and how sociopathic this guy is. So he ruined women left and right and lived with his favorites. And like he was so like celebrated that like he looks at one guy's wife and the wife is like, Alexander. And many were even boasting that I had a kid from Alexander. And their husbands were like total cucks, total cuckolds. And they were like, yeah, I had my wife do it with Alexander the snake prophet. Like, what a ridiculous thing. Speaking of all this sex, maybe I have you interested, but speaking of enrichment, let us say, please take a little 2-minute break now while I go and answer a call of nature. And in the meantime, please consider supporting me on patreon.com. I do all this research, all these podcasts, and they're totally free. But if you subscribe to me on Patreon, you can see my drawings of snake-human Glycon hybrids. You can see my sketches that are not published anywhere else. And you can download this PowerPoint presentation. You can get a lot of free CM Kozeman goodies that you cannot get anywhere else. So let me just go and I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. So, where were we? Okay. Sorry about that. Oh, my throat. Oh, God. I should drink some lemon and honey. Anyways, let's power through. So, Lucian also tells how credulous these people were to Glycon, basically, and he records this very weird conversation with like a total hook, line, and sinker believer in the cult of Glycon, and he says basically this shows you how stupid and gullible most worshippers of this snake god were. So there was this dialogue. It's recorded in Lucian's critique. Before reading it, let me just blow my nose. Oh, you won't believe what just comes out. It's just this kind of teaspoonful of boogers mixed with blood and snot. It's just disgusting. Anyways, gullible man says, "Tell me, Master Glycon, who are you?" And the snake god says, "I am the latter-day Asclepius." A different person from the one of the former times? What do you mean? We already had a god, Asclepius. And of course, here we also see how stupid Glycon's operators are, because they cannot answer this question. So what do they say? "It is not permitted for you to hear that." And then, it's like a really mystical atmosphere. "How many years will you be among us, dear Glycon, delivering oracles?" 1003. No more. I'm always reading this in the voice of the alien in Independence Day, 1996. The one that was imprisoned in Area 51. "Peace. No peace. Then where shall you go? Where shall you go, Master Glycon?" "To Bactra and that region, for barbarians too must profit from my presence among them." Of course, this is like a convenient escape from because in 1,000 years, who the fuck is gonna care, huh? And then the gullible man, he might be stupid, but he's asking questions. He wants to understand who this god is. And it kind of makes sense, because if you met a real god entity, wouldn't you want to ask questions like this? "What about the other shrines, sire? Do they still have your father as a source of their oracles? Or have they been outdated?" Of course, Apollo was the father of Asclepius, and apparently Glycon was the modern day Asclepius. So like this guy, even though he's like kind of stupid, he's like asking an honest question here. So Glycon says, let me get my Glycon tube. I'm speaking from the inside of a toilet paper roll, and it's a great sound effects device. "This too you must not wish to know. It is not permitted." "What about myself? Dear God, Glycon, I'm moved to tears." This guy's like, obviously he's like having a transcendental experience. "What will I be after my present life?" "You will be born again as a camel, then as a horse, and then a wise man and prophet as great as Alexander himself." Amazing. So this basically was the caliber of person who fervently believed in Glycon. And in fact, there were even cases where, I'm not going to even show you text, but I'm just going to tell about it. There were even cases where this stupid snake, like Alexander basically, through this snake god, gave a false oracle. Basically what happened is, one guy sailed up the river Nile, and this was part of the Roman world, of course, and it was a pilgrimage site. He sailed up the river. He was a rich guy, so he sailed with his servants. So then something happened. He disappeared, and only the servants came back. So what happened was this Glycon gave a false oracle, says, the servants must have killed this man. They are guilty. So he actually had these poor slaves executed. Remember, this must be one of those other little details that made people kind of sick with the kind of Roman lifestyle. But anyways, so these slaves were like blamelessly executed. Then, a couple of months later, this guy comes walking back. Oh, I was just, up the river. It was a dangerous place, but I just made it back. What happened? And they're, bro, sorry, we killed your slaves. It's almost like, bro, sorry, I broke your PlayStation 5. And then this was like a big scandal. And then a guy was like, some person, I don't know, a skeptic of Glycon, he like met Alexander in the town square, and he was like, wasn't it you who caused these slaves to be needlessly killed? Like, you're such a liar. You're so full of shit, Alexander. Basically, that's what he said. And then Alexander was, upon him, begone, please, arrest this man, arrest him. And then all these like believers almost lynched this man. So he was like kind of taking justice in his own hands. So like he was kind of getting dangerous in that respect. And then something else happened. The Roman Empire, of course, it's a big world. On the Western Front, there was also some military action. What happened was, there was a great rising among the Marcomanni, who were among the ancestors of the Germans. So there was a big war up here. It's the kind of war you see in the beginning of the 1998 film Gladiator by Ridley Scott. So a person no less than Emperor Marcus Aurelius himself, during the Marcomannic Wars of 166 to 180, Marcus Aurelius himself consulted Glycon for an oracle. Like, how do we win this war? What should we do for victory? Like, it's amazing, because normally people like look up to Marcus Aurelius as a kind of like benevolent emperor, smart, righteous emperor. And he was like a good ruler, obviously. Like, he was one of the better emperors out there. And it's kind of silly for us now to realize that this emperor as this like obvious charlatan for an oracle. And lo and behold, the oracle was, into the pool of Ishtar, the stream that basically into the river, the Rhine River, I guess. Hurl, I command you, a pail of Cybele's faithful assistants. Of course, Cybele is the scary lady goddess of the Roman days, and she is always accompanied by lions. So basically, the oracle is saying throw 2 lions into the river, and all the beasts that dwell on the mountains. So like he's asking, like, take a bunch of like poor animals and plants and throw them into the river, and then victory and great glory will welcome you in their footsteps. So they took 2 lions and a cornucopia of other animals, birds, and other poor things, and they just threw them into the river. How cruel! Lucianus also actually says that the lions, they like didn't know what was happening. They actually swam to the opposite shore. They didn't drown in the river because they're resilient animals. The lions swam to the opposite shore, where the Germans like clubbed them on the head and just killed them. I guess it was like a unique trophy for those war chiefs. And they were like, what are these, some big dog or something? And then nothing happened. And of course, what followed was an epic Germanic victory against the Roman invaders. Our brave Mujahideen heroes slaughtered the Romans. Entire legions were lost. And hey, serves them right, I guess. Who knows? Like, when evaluating any historic conflict, I always tend to root for the side that does not have tax inspectors or institutionalized slavery. I don't know. It's just a hunch I have. If the fight is between 2 powers with tax inspectors, then I can be ambivalent about the results. But in that battle, our German heroes won. They pulled an avatar on the Romans. The aliens went back to their dying world. They came back again and conquered some of the world, of course. But anyways, so it was a complete failure. Another big L for the fuck snake that was Glycon, and the fuck man that was his master, Alexander of Abonoticus. In this story, I'm really sad for the lions, by the way. Press F twice, so write FF to follow the lion, to honor the lions killed in the senseless conflict between colonial apes, let us say. Anyways, so also what something strange by Alexander was sometimes the cult became so famous that Scythians or other people from the edges of the Roman lands came in and asked for consultation, and to them Alexander through Glycon gave these meaningless responses. Like, these words don't mean anything. He said morphan eubergollis eiskian chnechikrage leipsei faos. Maybe it's a code. If we read this maybe in reverse, egarkichen doesn't make sense either. So he gave these like silly words, or even things like sabar dalaku malakataleos en. Now, Harry Potter shit right there. What a fuck up. This also sounds like a garbled version of a Hebrew prayer, but I don't know. I don't know, man. What do you think this is? So, obviously, Lucian the satirist, like, he was like one of the OG good Romans, in my opinion. Like, he's kind of like a selfless and relentless critique of bullshit. Basically, the guy couldn't resist calling bullshit when he saw it. So he wrote this big critique about Alexander's cult and the cult of Glycon, which is basically all my source for this podcast. So he actually had a big animosity towards Alexander. Like, once he met this guy, and Alexander was, of course, he was really smart guy, don't forget. So, it's my critique, Lucian the satirist. Well, I'll be charitable to you. You can kiss my hand. And Lucian was so infuriated that he bit Alexander's hand like a dog and drew blood, and maybe the muscles popped out or something. So that was one incident. And then Alexander was still like, this is the sign of a true evil cunt, by the way. I'm not resentful at all. Here, I'll gift you a boat passage to, like, he wanted to go somewhere, so he says, take my boat, attendants. So Lucian the satirist went on the boat, and he was almost killed. Basically, the boat's captain said, hey, sir, I gotta confess something to you. I was ordered to kill you by Alexander, and he even paid me money, and he paid my man money to kill you and throw you overboard. But I'm not gonna do this. I'm old. So he was just saved through the basically the goodness of this one sea captain. So he was like a really conniving motherfucker, you know, smiling at you as he plots your murder behind your back. What a fucking snake. Like, whew. If this guy was alive today, he could be a big name in internet blood sports. That's all I'm saying. So he was like, I'm about to end the snake's whole career, but Alexander with Glycon was like, oh, you can try. And even though Lucian wrote this like fierce critique, by the way, Alexander acquired lots of believers. As we saw before, even Marcus Aurelius kind of asked him for prophecy. But here you gotta think twice. I don't think Marcus Aurelius was a dupe, but he was obviously engaged in a very important military campaign. And here, around this part, there's like thousands of people, usually his soldiers too, like, I mean, so there were lots of soldiers coming from this part of the world. So of course you're gonna appease them with this kind of miracle trick. If it works, it makes you look good. If it doesn't work, then I'll cruise. If I lose it, then I'll figure it out. So he was like a master. Marcus Aurelius was a master tactician, smart guy. He knew how to use the power of the myth. Let us hope that was the case. And of course, Glycon and Alexander went on to become really famous, even though Alexander died in the year 188 from a maggot infestation in his flesh, I guess. Some sort of botulism shit. Serves him right, I guess, but the cult continued. And surprisingly, outlasted Lucian's critiques. It lasted apparently into the 4th century, which is kind of a late time. Like, this is when Christianity really gets into swing. It's the time of Constantine the Great. So it's amazing. And I would love to be alive in the 4th century, maybe explore the Anatolian Black Sea homeland and see what remained of this cult. So now we were talking about startup and stuff, and there's a kind of like a success ladder at which people can become successful as quacks and charlatans. Basically, you can be a like mere hustler. Basically, what you do is you try to make money any way you can. It doesn't need to involve these like magical cures or whatever, but let's say you buy and sell magical potions, whatever. Or you could be a quack like Alex Jones. You could be the one making these potions. But then, like Alexander or Kokonas, you could be a cult leader. Now, if you succeed as a cult leader, remember, love him or hate him, Alexander, I respect him for having like a really smart thinking mind. You know, he made a lot of money and he acquired a lot of power, but he used the money to make more money. He used the power to make more power. So in that respect, he was a high functioning sociopath. So he brought his game up from mere hustling to like something of a religious figure. Now, if he was more successful, he could have been a divinity himself, and maybe imagine this alternative history where Alexander succeeds and the cult of Glycon is as successful as Christianity itself. But of course, this did not happen because Christianity also, Christianity was not all good news. Christianity was like really subversive for its time. It contained within itself a sort of anti-logic, which heralded the birth of a new world order. So if you became a Christian, you also like converted, at least on paper, you converted your way of living and you learned this new way of life. And because of this, Christianity helped create a new world of order after Rome fell. Whereas the Glycon cult, bloop, it's kind of like, in my success rating of infamy, it's kind of like halfway between a true religious figure and a cult leader. Even though it lasted for like nearly 3 centuries, couldn't really pull off what the real religions did, because real religions, like, they don't merely promise you good omens, good acolytes. They're not good vibes only. They're also like promise you hail, brimstone, judgment. They say the world is gonna die and you're gonna suffer to it, but you're gonna be in it. And religions, like the religions that work, promise something that really speaks to the soul. And in my experience, what speaks to the soul also involves the fucked up present day order getting destroyed in some sort of a way. So this is the weird, like, destructive catharsis that true religions have and cults like Glycon just don't have. Because it was like, at the end of the day, a good vibes only event. Good oracles, good omens. Anyways. And also, the legacy lived on. Unbelievable. So, at one point, Alexander named his hometown from Abonoteikos to Ionopolis, because the ancient Romans had this like real ancient Greek fixation, just like today's Western civilization bros having an ancient Roman fixation. The first Romans saw themselves, rightly or wrongly, as the descendants of the Trojans, for example. And so it was like Abonoteikos was a kind of backwoods hick country town name, but then he named it Ionopolis after the Ionian civilization, the first ancient Greeks to settle the Anatolian mainland, basically. And lo and behold, this legacy persists to this very day. Ionopolis issued coins in its name with the pictures of the Glycon snake. Really, some legacy, I must admit. Ionopoleitan. And he says Glycon here. And there are many Glycon coins. In some, it has the human head. Like, you can really see here, it's like a puppet with a snake's body attached. Maybe this one too. But in some of the later coins, it's like a more dragon kind of serpent. And surprise, lo and behold, Ionopolis still has the same name today. In Turkey, it is known as the town of İnebolu. It's like going to Jersey City. Like, somehow, if you're an American, you'll understand. You go to Jersey City, it's like kind of a a humdrum kind of place, not the big city, but it's a city. You go to Jersey City, and you learn that the name of Jersey City comes from Jeruat City, which was this ancient, mystical Jersey devil, iconic prophet-giving monster that people worship. It's like really bizarre. Inebolu is just like one of these nice, it's a neat place, small town. It's actually quite a nice place to visit. I plan to visit it someday. Maybe I could take an expedition there just to look for traces, if any, of Glycon the Serpent. But it's a small town. People are proud of it. It's a nice kind of like seaside retirement kind of place. But imagine it's like this name goes back to this snake prophet, which was concocted by a transparently evil sociopath. Like, how cool is that? There's even an Ionopoly hotel. If I go there, I'll probably stay here. Like, let me know in the comments if you want an Ionopolis expedition, and I could make that happen. But the true iconic figure of Glycon the snake, this marble statue, was found in Romania, out of all places, in the city of Köstence. When they were digging for the foundations of a train station, they found this hoard of statues, including also Hecate, the three-headed Roman goddess, a lot of other things. They found this. And this statue was so famous in Romania. Heads up to my Romanian followers, by the way. Respect to you all. It became a sign in Romanian stamps. And even Romanian currency at one point featured the statue of Glycon the Serpent. So from such ignoble beginnings, it kind of became an icon and a name for entire cities. And this is what I find fascinating about studying history. I also found another statue of Glycon in the Ankara Museum of Anatolian Civilization. So this cult had a big outreach in the Roman world. And then, of course, in the present day, my voice is totally about to desert me, but in the present day, Alan Moore, the famous cartoonist who wrote the, what was it called? Watchmen. He wrote the Watchmen, and he also wrote the other thing. So I won't question his genius. I won't try to diss him, but he kind of pulled this kind of early 2000s ironic atheism stunt where he said, I worship the god Glycon. At least my god is transparently a puppet, while you don't even know that your god is a puppet. But of course, as we just explained, with the growth of Christianity, there were certain things that, real or artificial, Christianity promised that Glycon just didn't. And this is just an atrocious error by Alan Moore. He's letting his snake puppet speak and say, I was created by Alexander of Abonoticus, a Pythagorean scholar. Decidedly not a Pythagorean scholar. At another interview, which I don't have screen caps of, Alan Moore said, it was just a boa constrictor. What the fuck? Boa constrictors are a new world snake. They don't live in the old world. This is just a snide, early 2000s, neckbeard, fedora tipping, internet atheists, early 2000s, let's say neckbeardery on behalf of Alan Moore, I am sorry to say. Even though he's otherwise a superb comic artist and a comic writer, no doubt there. But a lot of his themes are about these artificial gods, aren't they? I mean, in The Watchmen with that whole Dr. Manhattan thing. And in the end, of course, they create this fake evil threat from the stars to keep the world in peace. So a lot of Alan Moore's work has this theme of fake gods. So maybe it kind of fits, but as far as I'm concerned, it's like a cheap early 2000s internet atheist trick. I don't know. I just don't know, man. Obviously, the story shows us how narcissists and sociopaths can rapidly acquire power so efficiently if given the chance. And in fact, if you notice, in the present day and age, if you go to any company, any startup, any bureaucratic circle, any presidency, any prime ministry, any political party, any NGO, there are people exactly like Alexander of Abonoticus running the show. They're not there by mistake. They're there because those places host them. High-functioning sociopaths with an agenda, only concerned about themselves, full of hubris, but also smart about themselves. I mean, you got the low-functioning sociopaths, which you can see them, okay. The high-functioning ones, you never see. Only these people, unfortunately, run the show wherever you are in the world. And in this day and age, certain tricks and weird cults like that persist in this part of the world as well. In Turkey, there were many cases where this guy basically claimed he was God, and he called his victims from a device that let him show caller ID from a Mecca area code that's in Saudi Arabia today. So like these guys are like, somebody's calling me from Saudi Arabia and he says, I am God. And then he sends his people. Basically, he collected millions of dollars from people working in an industrial factory region. So these are like factory owners giving this guy money because he says he is God. There was also this guy who was like, who formed a little circle around himself where in order to clean their spirits, he was anally raping not only the man, but also their woman. And then like, the wife was saying like, oh, the sheikh took my husband's dick in his mouth and whatever, a lot of sexually weirdness. And then people took their relatives to see this guy so that he could keep raping them. This was amazing. And then there's also this case of this one guy, like he was like, oh, you are attacked by jinn, which are these evil spirits. And he says, you must film a gay video of yourself and send it to me masturbating. So, because one of these jinns apparently is a gay jinn, and I will use it to ward him off. I don't know. And then in another story, there are hundreds of stories like this. So this is just a skim reading of all of them, the best ones. This one, again, holy man said there's a place where there's treasure guarded by jinns, and he made his followers dig a gas pipe, and when one of them lit a match, they blew up. These were all in recent legit Turkish news. But let us not think that this is particular to Turkey. All around the world there are cases like this, especially in the developed world. I mean, in Florida, a Florida man was arrested for a $1 million psychic scam. In Bangladesh, there was this man claiming to be a master of jinn and extorting money from people using fairies and magic charms. Also remember that Indonesian giant gecko scam I showed you earlier. And then in Canada, a man was using a sort of fake exorcism scheme to basically cheat people from an Indian immigrant community. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff. So don't think this is only in Turkey. So people remain as gullible as ever towards these schemes. Because as Lucian the satirist said, fear and, what was it? Hope and death, or fear or death? Oh, wait. I must read this. Death and hope rule the spirits of human beings. So as long as there is an exploit, people are going to be out there to hack them. Also, let's not even get started about the cults that are up and around today, especially from the 1970s onwards. And some of these cults were extremely destructive. Let's leave it at that. So it's almost like a human instinct to want to be brainwashed this way, don't you think? And of course, as I was just telling, in the top rungs of any organization, religions, politics, NGOs, even benevolent organizations like Greenpeace, PETA, it's peopled only with narcissists who have a high functioning ability. The world is only being ruled by high functioning sociopaths and narcissists. And this has not changed from the Roman days. If there's one lesson this story of Glycon the snake can teach us, it is this. only narcissists rule the world. So, watch where you're going. Careful out there. So that was that, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this amazing podcast of Glycon the Serpent. In ancient Roman days, there was a custom of writing the names of temple patrons, carving them onto temple walls. So like that, I'm carving the names of my patrons to this wall. I would love to read them all one by one, but I can't now because my throat is gone so sore. I'm literally like blood is coming out of my nose. So forgive me, but all of these people, thank you so much. I know even $1 is a big money in this day and age. People can't even spare a dollar. So if you support me, thank you so much. If you support me and maybe want to make that $1 donation into a $2 one, I would appreciate it so much. And I love you all. I will continue to put my heart and soul into these videos. And if you follow me on Patreon, you can also find my artwork of Glycon serpents, and you can also download this presentation. Thank you all so much for following me. What do you think about the cult of Glycon? Do you think it could have competed with Christianity? Do you think there was something genuine in it, or do you think it was just evil and false? Write down your comments in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching. This has been CM Kozeman. Goodbye. Oh my